you know what? It's upside down. So if you didn't see it, that might be why. This is the back page, and just the back page, of the first comic book that I remember trying to read. It's possible that I succeeded in reading it, but I don't remember the story that was in there from back then. But this, I was more interested in this anyway. It looks like I got it from Kmart, probably in Manistee, because I first attempted to do this. This is the Magic Eye, what is it called? Auto stereogram, I think. I first attempted to do this in my aunt and uncle's camping trailer, which is also where I first listened to the actual CD, Pure Moods. I'd seen the commercial, and I wanted to order the CD, but didn't. And my aunt had it, and she played it when I was camping with her. But this I remember, and more than the comic again. I did go through, but it was very, very short, the phase of wanting to collect comics back when I was a kid, and then almost really by accident, I kind of got into comics again as an adult, more through comic book movies than anything else. But really, the interest came from a day when I was exploring around, I think it was Lower Manhattan, and it happened to be Free Comic Book Day. It was the first time I'd ever heard of Free Comic Book Day, and someone on Facebook had said something about going to the comic store for Free Comic Book Day, but it was in a different city, and I took very little notice of it. But then we were walking past a comic book store, and it said free comic books, and I always love anything free. So we went up, and we each got free comic books, even the person in our party who probably has never been remotely interested in comic books. So that rekindled the interest. But so for this video, I'm just going to show a few comics, but also a few pages of comics that I've saved, because I finally went through all the comic books that, not just me, but my brothers also. We all went through the phase, but we were so not into it that there's a small enough pile that I got through it in a week. But I want to get rid of them. So, as with real books, and I don't mean to be dismissive by that, but as with real books like this, I've got to read it before I can get rid of it, because maybe I want to keep it, but probably not in the case of most things. I'm going to bring them back upstate. My brothers are going to look through them, and then we'll see how they divide themselves. Those first comics, I got some here from the first comics, and actually this page, obviously from that first. And as I was reading the comics, I did cut out other pages. This page kind of fell off, but other things from those initial comics I cut out because I wanted to keep them just for remembering other things. Like, I may never have been that into Superman, but Stick Stickly and Nick in the Afternoon, I really, really loved Stick Stickly and Nick in the Afternoon. And so I got to this ad, and I very carefully, but not carefully enough, cut it out of the comic book, because none of the comic books that I read, I looked it up on eBay, are worth anything. In fact, they are worth less, I think, in many cases, according to eBay, than they were worth on the day they were purchased. So I'm disfiguring them, but I'm not devaluing them. But Stick Stickly is a lot of fun. And the first time I got the instinct to do this, I was reading, it was a comic book, well, there are still some pages of it. This, I don't think that's maybe, is it Nightwing? I think it's a descendant of Batman, because I think that's Raj Al Ghul. It doesn't say his name anywhere that I can see, but anyway, he's not what I was interested in anyway. This this double page. So first, let's see. First, Game Boy Pocket Ice Blue. I remember I didn't see this ad in the comic when I first got it, because I didn't even read it. But I remember the TV commercials for the Ice Blue Game Boy Pocket, and it was They were right before probably the Christmas season, actually. I don't remember exactly when they were released, but the Christmas after the Ice Blue Game Boy Pocket was advertised was when my brothers and I got Game Boy Pockets for Christmas. And I remember really wanting that one. It said limited edition, and I think it meant it because, well, Game Boy Pockets evolved into other things, and so they stopped selling Game Boy Pockets. They evolved into Game Boy Colors, and so on, and so they stopped selling all Game Boy Pockets. But I look up the Ice Blue Game Boy Pockets, at least I did once or twice, and they actually are worth something, and I've still got mine, and I think it still works. And then, of course, scorecard for Nickelodeon Kids' Choice Awards, and there's Rosie O'Donnell. She was the host. It's hosted by Rosie O'Donnell, and then there's a couple of kids holding the orange blimps that were the awards. And who's nominated? There's favorite singer, Puff Daddy, Will Smith, Mariah Carey, Celine Dion. Favorite team, Chicago Bulls, Green Bay Packers, San Francisco 49ers, Atlanta Braves. I knew who the Bulls were back then. I know who all of these teams are now, but just the Bulls back then. Favorite movie actor, Will Smith again, alongside Jim Carrey, Tim Allen, Robin Williams. Now, does it have a... I'm trying to figure out... Well, I could probably look up when Game Boy Pocket came out. There's no date on here, so I can't... 1998. So, when in 1998? April 4th. So the awards were on April 4th. This ad is from 1998. Therefore, it was probably Will Smith for Men in Black, and Jim Carrey for maybe The Mask, Robin Williams for Jumanji. I don't know. Robin Williams was probably nominated for Kids' Choice Awards for everything back then. Could have looked up that. Favorite movie? Oh, Men in Black, Liar Liar, Titanic, Batman, and Robin. So Men in Black, Will Smith. That's probably his thing. Liar Liar, maybe Jim Carrey. Although, why would the Kids' Choice Awards? Well, if that was the Jim Carrey movie that came out, and it is about a kid, so that's... But you see why I wanted this. Favorite show, Keenan and Kel, Sister Sister, Sabrina the Teenage Witch. Was that on... Oh, that's not just Nickelodeon stuff. And Home Improvement. That's where Tim Allen. Favorite TV actor, Tim Allen. So then what was... Maybe it was Jungle to Jungle, the Tim Allen for the movie thing. He's also in Favorite TV Actor. Favorite TV Actress, Brandy, Tia, and Tamara Mowry. They don't even get separate nominations. They get nominated together. Melissa Joan Hart, Kirstie Alley. I don't know what Kirstie Alley was in the Kids' Choice Awards would have. But anyway, you can see why I wanted to keep these pages, and I cut them out, and I cut badly. You can see the tear there. But obviously I made a good choice because I just talked for 5 minutes about one of these pages and 2 minutes about the other on a YouTube video. So anyway, actual comic books. Here now we get to actual comic books. I have 2 Big Boy comic books from the Big Boy restaurant. This one has an interview with Larissa Oleynik. I never knew her name before, I think a couple of years ago, because she was just Alex Mack. And then this has an interview with Adam West. Not just a name that I know better because he was Batman, but because it's just a simpler name. Although her name is I think, a better name. Anyway, the Big Boy comics, which I got when going to Big Boy restaurants with a different aunt, but same state, Michigan. And we got the comics because on the backs of the comics were the menus. And I think there were also the placemats that we colored in didn't have the menus. The comic books had the menus, and I wonder if they still give out comic books. I read them, just like I read all the other comics. They are fun, but I'm keeping them mostly for it says Big Boy Magazine, but they are comic books. I'm keeping them more for nostalgia than for wanting to get into the story again. They are comic books. Looks like it says $91.59 for a price, but then it says, they cross that out and it says free for you to take home. Using 4U2 in place of FORYOUTO, long before texting and instant messaging. Maybe not long before instant messaging, but long before texting. This one says $4.72, this says $4.79, so maybe they were the same trip to Michigan. It was probably a monthly thing or a weekly thing, I don't know. But keeping those. I turned down a Captain America comic, a Superman comic, and a comic book, and I'm not going to show any of the comics that I'm not keeping, but a comic book that has Marvel characters facing off against DC characters, but I'm keeping, I'm getting rid of that one, but I'm keeping the Big Boy comics. I just want to emphasize that. And I'll say one thing about the DC versus Marvel comic. Thor and Shazam, the two lightning-based superheroes, they face off against each other. I won't say who wins, but Wonder Woman ends up picking up Thor's hammer, which means that Wonder Woman is worthy, and according to Wonder Woman 1984, she also can interact with lightning to great effect, so there's that. But I'm not keeping the comic book. I am keeping this comic book. Jurassic Park: The Lost World tie-in comic book. This one, let's see, it says 4 of 4, and so this one has from the raptor attack in the tall grass to the very end, John Hammond talking about how we need to leave the dinosaurs alone. And I don't think I ever had any of the other 3, but I was really into Jurassic Park. I still am. In fact, I probably am more into Jurassic Park now than I was then. Look at the T-Rex biting the lamppost there. So I must have picked this up because I was really into Jurassic Park and wanted anything to do with Jurassic Park. And it's interesting. I guess it's kind of, I don't know how closely these adhere to the storyboards, but they always say when they're making comic book movies, comic books are essentially storyboards for movies. So maybe one day I'll watch The Lost World while I am reading through, and I'll try to keep pace and see if the different shots match up to the pictures. So I'm keeping that one. I am keeping this Ghost Rider comic. When I did get into comics, I think the way that we got our comics, my brothers and I, is we went to wherever they were being sold used or given away used, and we picked the ones that looked good to us. And I liked Ghost Rider not only because he has a flaming skull for a head, but because I didn't know who he was. I knew who Spider-Man, Batman, Superman, the X-Men were. I'd seen the cartoons. I didn't know anything about Ghost Rider, and I liked the idea of, and I still do, and I usually do, it's the contrarian thing. I liked the idea of being my comics, the ones that were important to me, being the comics that weren't important to everybody else. So a not as well-known, not as screen-friendly character like Ghost Rider. And then when the Nicolas Cage movie came out, I got excited about that. But I'm keeping this. I actually had 2. The other one was only half Ghost Rider comic, and then the other half. That's what some of these comics are, half what it says on the cover and then half something else. And in some cases, they have another cover upside down on the back, but that one didn't, and most of them don't. So it's just half one story and then half another. And that's kind of an exaggeration of the reason why I didn't get into comics, because you need to find them all. Like this is 35 March. I don't know. This is some number issue in this run of Ghost Rider comics, and I don't know where the other ones are. And I could look it up, and I could find them on eBay, and I could get them. But I'll hold this up again. This is not a book I'm giving away. This is The Woman in White, which I just recorded a chapter from, and this is all here. The story is all here. It's always been all here, and it always will be. It's not scattered to the 4 winds, and I've got to track down all the other chapters. It's all in that book. Now, if I wanted to find all the magazines, the all-year-round magazines, where the chapters of The Woman in White were originally published, that would be a different thing, but that would be more of a collector thing than I want to finish the story. This, if I want to get the story, I got to find them all. So I keep it for nostalgic reasons, as a representation of comics in my collection of things to read and watch and look at, but I don't want, it's not that I don't care. If the opportunity arose to read all the comics in this run and complete the story, I would, but I don't want to put that kind of effort into, it's the same reason there are essentially only 9 Star Wars things to me. There are the episodes 1 through 9, and then there are other things, but I don't care. I'll watch them, but I don't care. So that's how I feel about comics. And while I'm on that, another thing is just, I never feel like I've looked at the picture. Like, I know I've read all the words, but I never feel like I've looked at the picture for long enough to get everything that's in the picture. And I took a class on comics, graphic novels in college, and that drilled home to me that you can never look at a picture in a comic book closely enough for long enough. So I want to read the words and then read more words and get the story that way. But I feel like in doing that too quickly, I'm shortchanging the pictures. But I feel like if I don't shortchange the pictures, it takes me too long. So it's not a format that is well suited to me. I enjoy it every so often. I enjoyed reading all the comics that my brothers and I collected, and I will enjoy reading comics in the future. But it's not something I'm that into. This is the newest comic that I have. I bought it when our train out of Washington, D.C. was delayed, and so we were just wandering around Union Station, and there was a comic book shop, and I thought, I haven't bought a comic or read a comic in years. So this Thor, I knew that there was a run where Jane Foster becomes Thor, and this is, I guess, 021, maybe that's number 21 in the run. But yeah, so I bought this to read while waiting for the train, and it's fun to look at. They're doing that movie now. Thor 4 is, I think, going to be based on this run of the comics. And in this story, it does end with Jane Foster as Thor. And Jane Foster is played by Natalie Portman in the movies, so I'm particularly excited for that. But that's kind of, in this, like, it's kind of the way that this is, again, not meant to be insulting because I like McDonald's food. It's kind of the way that I would get McDonald's food when I'm just waiting for something and I'm in Times Square and I'm waiting to meet somebody, or I'm waiting for something to happen, something to start, and I go to McDonald's to get something to eat. That's the same way that I bought this. I bought this to be fast food to read and look at. And I keep it because it might be worth something someday, but also as kind of the rekindling of my interest in comics. I think this was before I started going, the last couple of years, not 2020, I did make a point of going to comic book stores on Free Comic Book Day, sometimes multiple comic book stores, to get as many comics, because then got a pile of free comics. They're all essentially ads for comic book runs that are coming, or other things, but they're either beginnings or they are just advertisements. But the point is, you don't need to commit, you don't need to spend money, and then you've got a pile of things to read and enjoy. And also, again, before 2020, the comic book days always coincided, somewhat deliberately on my part, because that first time, with Atlas Obscura Day, which I don't know if they still do it, but it was always, I think, the first Saturday in May, and that is when Comic Book Day is. And so we would be in different cities. I think Philadelphia one year, and Baltimore one year, and New York that first year on Free Comic Book Day, and I would look for all the Atlas Obscura places to go to, but I would also look for the comic book shops to get some free comics, which were also good to have when out of town, something to read when out of town. I didn't bring books with me. So this is fun, and I'm going to keep it around. And then last, but certainly not least, back when we were first collecting comics for that brief period, the only new, the Jurassic Park one was probably new, but the only new superhero comic book comics that I remember buying was this set. Let's see, came in this container, Spider-Man Greatest Collector's Set, and I think this is one of 3 sets of 3, and I might eventually track down the other sets so that I do actually have the full collection of and the whole story. But you can imagine, I mean, these are standard looking comics, but you can imagine I was pretty excited see a cover like this. And I'll just show. It's just a cool thing. It caught my eye. I wanted it not because it was a comic book, but because it looked cool. And that is part of marketing with anything, but especially with comics. The just dynamic, exciting pictures on the front. I have read these 3. I, again, will, let's see, yeah, this is part 1 of 6, part 2, part 3 of 6, Maximum Carnage. I even kind of remember what it's about. I will probably track down the other 6, or the other one. If it's only 6, then there's only 1. And that is not as big a commitment as if I were to track down everything else I'd need to fully grasp these 2. If I ever find the other 3 of these, maybe. Depends on the context. But anyway, that's essentially going to be my comic book collection for the foreseeable future. And I think it's interesting, eclectic, and it tells you a little bit about me. But I will go to the free comic book day events and get more comics and enjoy them because it's nice free stuff, and then you can recycle them afterwards. That's another thing. They're very recyclable, but they have nostalgic things, and people also think that in many cases they will be worth a lot of money one day. And I don't know how true that is, but I like their free comics, and therefore, since I didn't spend money on them, I feel no compunction about recycling them. And that, I think, is a good fate for them. So that's it for that. I don't know what my next non-reading video is going to be, but I'll try to come up with something. If you found this fun, I'll try to find something as fun as this. And yeah, have a good week.